Getting Matt to walk here again.
Okay. Welcome everyone. Wednesday night, Halacha Chassidus. And now full blast ahead into Pesach prep. And I have to say, I'm very, very excited about the shir tonight. I spent quite a bit of time preparing the shir, both the Halacha and the Chassidus part. The Chassidus part, the goal is to do it in 3 weeks, to cover it in 3 weeks, God willing, I hope. And the Halacha will, as we've been doing recently for the past little while, God willing, a separate topic in Halacha each week. This week for the Halacha topic, I was a little too excited maybe, and I went a little bit off the beaten path from what we've done up till now. Usually we do like a question and an answer. This is a little bit different of an approach. It's not, I don't want to say it's not practical. That's not accurate, but we're going to examine a little bit about Charoset, based on a commentary in the Haggadah that the Rebbe wrote. Now, by way of introduction, people often think of the Rebbe as being a very copious author, wrote a lot of books. The fact is that he did not write a lot of books. There are many, many, many books I have. I don't know if I have all of them. I probably have almost all of them to print, if not all of them that are currently in print in my house, and they fill an entire bookshelf. But the Rebbe didn't write them. They were written by other people who sat at the Farbrengens and memorized the Farbrengens and then wrote them down afterwards. Some of them, those were edited and checked by the Rebbe, but the vast corpus of the Rebbe's teachings were not written by the Rebbe. They're written by other people, writing what the Rebbe said. However, the Rebbe did write a few books, actually, and one of them is a Haggadah. He wrote a commentary on the Haggadah. It's primarily halachic in nature, focusing a lot on sources and explaining why the version of the Haggadah with the instructions that were authored by the Alter Rebbe that appear in standard Chabad Siddur nowadays. A lot of times he's investigating why the Alter Rebbe wrote an instruction like this, not like that. Why he included a certain statement, a certain variation in the Haggadah, things like that. So it's going to be somewhat analytical, I hope, and I hope it's going to be gishmak and give us an excitement for Pesach and excitement for Limud HaTorah. With no further ado, connecting to the Parsha, I forgot my Chumash over here. Do I have an English Chumash over here? Do you mind grabbing this English Chumash for that? Actually, the reason I chose Charoset for the topic tonight, in addition that it's just interesting, one of the Aryeh Kaplan Chumash over there is fine, is that it's connected to the Parsha as well, both this week and last week, actually. Thank you. Let's take a look in this week's Parsha, Perek Lamed Hey, Alshus Vayakel. Sorry, I meant to have this out in advance, but I didn't. The pasuk the whole parsha really is talking about the Mishkan, and the pasuk says, "Uvacharoshas even lamalois, uvacharoshas eitz." What does it mean? Where's the English? Cut stones to be set. Charoshas even. Even is a stone. Cut charoshas means to cut. Cut stones lamalois to fill. To be set, as they call them. Uvacharoshas eitz. Eitz is wood. And carpentry work. La'asois b'chol melechas machshavos. To do all sorts of other skilled work. So you have the word charoshas, which this pasuk appears in this week's parsha and last week's parsha Kisisa. Charoshas sounds an awful lot like charoset. It means some type of craftsmanship. Cut stones to be set and do carpentry and other skilled work. Everybody looks perplexed. Where am I going with this? Let's take a look in this initial entry in the Rebbe's Haggadah over here on page 6. Charoset. Why do we have charoset? We're going to go into this more. It's a reminder of the clay with which our ancestors were made to work. And you put a davar shel kiyuha, some type of acrid substance in it. We're going to talk about that later. Zeicher shahayu shina yisrael keos mikoshi hashivud. Bach. As a reminder how the teeth of Israel were set on edge by the harshness of their bondage. And the Charoset is made out of a mixture of fruits to which the people of Israel have been compared. We're going to get to that in the Rambam later, what those fruits exactly are. The Rambam is going to give us a recipe book, very unusual. After you put all the fruits together, you soften it by adding a red liquid, wine typically, right? As a reminder of the blood, which was the first of the 10 plagues. Anything which is used as a dip can be called charosis. Now, what does this have to do with Parshas of Hayakel? That I mentioned the words uvacharosis even lamalois uvacharosis eitz. So the Rebbe brings siman elacharosis, a sign, a mnemonic device by which we can remember what are the ingredients for charosis. If you enjoy a culinary experimentation, that is. Most Ashkenazim don't do this, but nevertheless, charosis even, the word even is in italics. Charosis eitz, the word eitz is in italics. Belosh and Ashkenaz, in Yiddish, this is the following. Even is aleph based on aleph stands for apple, which is apple. Base is baran, which means pears. Nun is nisin, which means nuts. Then you have eitz is ayin, or he writes it as an aleph here, is ingver, which is ginger. And tzaddik of the eitz is tzimrind, which is cinnamon. That is from the Arizal, from Kabbalah. Okay, fine. The minute Chabad is not used. It's fine. We don't need to focus on that now. Okay, so that is the hint in this week's parsha. It's a hint that's a little bit buried, but it's a hint to the charosis in our parsha this week. Okay, that's the hint. Now let's get to the topic. This is the topic, I guess. The Gemara says, the Mishneh says, Masechta Pesachim Daf Kuf Yud Dal Ramad Aleph. Heviu Lefonav. The attendants bring before him. Who's the him? The one conducting the Seder, right? We know that in the good old days, everybody had their own little table also, right? That's the way it was. Everybody had their own little table. Well, you didn't sit at a big table like this. Everybody had their little table where you would recline, where you'd have your wine, your matzah, you'd have everything over there. So Heviu Lefonav. The attendants would bring in front of him, meaning the guy, the balabas, the one leading the Seder, they would bring vegetables in front of him if there were no other vegetables on the table already. And what would he do? Matabel b'chazeres. He would dip it into water or vinegar to taste a little bit of food before he would reach the parperes hapas, which is what? Parperes means roughly dessert, the dessert of the bread, also known as the moror, which was eaten with matzah. Then, heviu lefon of matzah v'chazeres v'charoises u'shnei tavshilin. Then they would bring him matzah and chazeres and charoises and two cooked. Here it says in the English, it says at least 2 cooked, but shnei tavshilin, 2 cooked dishes in honor of Yontif. Now here's the part we're going to focus on. The Mishnah then concludes, Afal pisha ein charoises mitzvah. They brought him charoises at the table, at his little private personal table, even though charoises is not a mitzvah. But they brought it to him anyway. They brought him matzah, they brought him moror, they brought all the items of the Seder, the mitzvahs, including charoises, even though, says the Mishnah, charoises is not a mitzvah. Here's where it gets exciting. Rebbe Loza bar Tzadok oimer, mitzvah. Yes, it is a mitzvah. Charoises is indeed a mitzvah. And in fact, he says, Uva mikdash. I'm sorry, we're going to get back to Rebbe Tzadok later. Uva mikdash mavil lefon of gufashal Pesach. If it was in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, they would actually bring an actual carbon Pesach for him to actually eat at that time. Okay, so is charoises a mitzvah? The answer is it's machlokes in our Mishnah. The Tana Kama says charoises is not a mitzvah. Rebbe Loza bar Tzadok says charoises is a mitzvah. With me so far? Mitzvah yes or mitzvah no? 2 different opinions. Let's look at the next piece of Gemara on the page. It's from Daf Kuf, from a page or so later. So the Mishnah said, as we just saw, Afal Pisha in Charoset mitzvah, even though Charoset isn't the mitzvah, they bring it to him anyway. Frek the Gemara, v'i loy mitzvah mishum mai sila. The obvious question: if Charoset is not a mitzvah, so what are you mixing in for? What are you bringing him Charoset for if it's not a mitzvah? What are we? Is it just stam because it tastes good? What are we bringing it for? We didn't have the recipe yet. We're going to get the recipe. We're going to say, oh, it's delicious Charoset. Maybe they bring him Charoset because it's delicious. No. If it's not a mitzvah, frek the Gemara, so why are they bringing it? Right? Vila loy mitzvah mishum mai sila. So answer the Gemara, Omer of Ami, simple answer, mishum kafa. There's some kind of poison or something. I'm not sure. There's maybe different ways to translate that word here. I took the Koran English translation. Some type of poison in the mortar. And somehow, please don't ask me to explain this scientifically. Somehow, the Charoset is going to neutralize this poison that seems to sometimes be found. Some say maybe it's not a poison, it's a worm. I don't know, different explanations of what kafa is exactly. But somehow, the Charoset, you're dipping your mar into the Charoset, and that will somehow neutralize this poison or whatever it is exactly that's found somewhat commonly in your maror. So it's not a mitzvah. It's actually maybe even more than a mitzvah. Maybe it's a sakana. There's a danger. So they bring him Charoset even though it's not a mitzvah. Good. Questions, comments so far? We're okay. All right. Pretty straightforward so far, right? Okay, let's go to the next page. Weiter in the Gemara. Same Gemara. Masechta Pesachim. Famous parak of Arvei Pesachim. So the Mishnah said, after we said that Charoset is not a mitzvah, and now the Gemara asks, well, if it's not a mitzvah, what are you bringing it for? Now we quote from the next part of the Mishnah, Rebbe Loza bar Tzodek oimer mitzvah, that it is indeed a mitzvah, the Charoset. So there you don't have a complicated question. If it's a mitzvah, obviously you're bringing it to the leader of the Seder, just like the matzah, just like the morah, and everything else that's a mitzvah. So we're not going to ask the same question that we asked before, because it is a mitzvah. What question is the Gemara going to ask? So frek the Gemara, my mitzvah. Which mitzvah? It's a mitzvah. Which one? Is it the mitzvah of eating matzah? No. Is it the mitzvah of eating morah? No. Which mitzvah is it? Rebbe Levi Oimer, so Rebbe Levi says, I'll tell you which mitzvah it is. It's zeichel tapuach. It's a remembrance of the apple. What's the apple? The pasuk says, in Shir Hashirim tachas hatapuch ararticho, that I awakened you under the apple tree, which is a reference to the exodus from Egypt, Yetzias Mitzrayim. So the apple, the fruit of an apple, which we know is the main fruit of the Charoset, really, right? Reminds us of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Rabbi Yochanan Oimer, something else, Zecher Latit. It's a reminder of here they translate it as mortar, could also be translated, I looked it up in the Jastrow dictionary, it's translated as clay. Maybe we'll come back to that later, why I think it might be important to translate it as clay, perhaps. He says, Zecher Latit, it reminds us of the clay, of the mortar that the Yidden used for our slave labor in Egypt. That's what the Charoset reminds us of. Therefore, since it reminds us, according to the Levi, of the apple, and according to Rabbi Yochanan of the mortar / clay, therefore you need to do two things to it. Number one, you have to tzarech l'kahui, or how do you pronounce the word exactly? You have to make it tart, because apples are tart, so it's got to be tart like the apples. And also, you have to make it thick, like the mortar. And the Gemara continues. We have a brisa that teaches a similar teaching to Rabbi Yochanan, and says tavlin zeichel tevin. You put spices into the Charoset to remind us of the tevin, of the straw. The spices, I guess, are a little bit crumbly or something like that. A little bit crumbly. They remind us of the straw that we used during our backbreaking labor, building a nice
cinnamon comes in sticks, and you buy cinnamon in that.
Cinnamon comes in sticks. Very good.
So you have to crush it and then use it. So
good, perfect. That reminds us of the straw that we used during our backbreaking labor in Egypt. Charoset zeichel latit. Then you have the Charoset itself reminds us of the clay or the mortar. Rebbe Elazar bar Tzadok comes along. Rebbe Elazar bar Tzadok says a fascinating statement. This is in fact what these shopkeepers would say in Jerusalem. They would say as follows: Boyu tlu lechem tavlin mitzvah. Come get your spices for the mitzvah. Which mitzvah? Charoset. That's what Rebbe Elazar bar Tzadok. Charoset is a mitzvah. Which mitzvah is it? The Gemara wants to know. It either reminds us of the apple, which is a reference to the verse in Shir Hashirim, which refers to the Exodus from Egypt, and or it reminds us to the tit, to the mortar, the clay that we used in our backbreaking labor. That's the mitzvah. Let's take a look at the Rambam. How does the Rambam paskin? In Hilchos Chometz U'Matzah Perek Zayin, HaCharoset is mitzvah. Oh, who does he paskin like? Rebbe Elazar bar Tzadok in our Mishnah. Paskins like Rebbe Elazar bar Tzadok. Did you know that? That Rambam Paskins Charoset is a mitzvah. Medivrei Seifim Zecher Lotit reminds us of the clay Shayu Ovdin B'Bim Mitzrayim. So he Paskins like Elazar bar Tzadok and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says Zecher Lotit. The Rambam does not say Zecher Lotapuach like Rabbi Levi. However, the Ketzad saw here comes our cookbook. How do you make Charoset? You take dates or figs or raisins or the like. You crush them. You put in some vinegar into them, and then you can put some spices in. Just like clay is mixed into straw. Sounds similar now to what we said in the Gemara before. So who does the Rambam paskin like? Rebbe Elazar bar Tzadok, Charoset is a mitzvah. Okay, so far? Here's where it gets complicated. We take a look in the Lechem Mishneh. The Lechem Mishneh is a commentary on the Rambam. And he says as follows, Kan Posak Rebbe Elazar bar Tzadok. Here in the Mishnah Torah, Sefer Zmanim, Hilchos Chometz U'Matzah Perek Zayin, Halacha Yud Aleph, the Rambam paskins like Rebbe Elazar. It's a typo, no? Is it Eliezer or Elazar?
It says Eliezer.
Eliezer. Above in the Gemara, on the top of the page, it said Rebbe Elazar.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was Elazar. Here in the Mishnah Torah, Kan Posek Rebbe Elazar bar Tzadok, Dafkuf Yodalit. However, look at the next line. Here's where it gets complicated. Ubepirish Mishnah Kosav Behefich. In the Rambam's commentary in the Mishnah, he says the opposite. And he says over there, in his commentary in the Mishnah, quote, he says, "The Ladivrei Rebbe Elazar bar Tzadok tzorich loymar asher kiddishana b'mitzvah v'tzvana al achilas charoset." That's what the Rambam writes in Pirush Mishnayos. That according to Rebbe Elazar bar Tzadok, if it's a Mishnah, if it's a mitzvah, you know what you have to do? You have to say a bracha. You say a bracha on the mortar. Yeah. Bracha on the matzah? Yeah. Bracha on the hagafen, on the cups? Yeah. So you have to say a bracha on charoset also. That's the Rambam says, according to Rebbe Elazar bar Tzadok, you have to say a special bracha. However, ve'ein halacha kamosei. Oh, contradiction in the Rambam. You see the contradiction? In the Mishnah Torah, he passes like a Rebbe Elazar bar Tzadok. In the commentary in the Mishnayos, he says, no, the halacha is not like Rebbe Elazar bar Tzadok. So the Lechem Mishnah says, it seems that the Rambam changed his mind. It says, changed his mind. Interesting, when we call mokim, however, the question is, why not? Why taka don't we make a bracha on the charoset? If it's a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, you make a bracha on a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. It doesn't have to be a d'oraisa, right? The mortar bisman hazeh is d'Rabbanan after all. We made a bracha just a couple days ago, whatever. Al Mikra Megillah. That's a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. So why taka ask the Lechem Mishnah? Don't we say a bracha on the charoset? Even though you might say, no. You can't compare making a bracha on moror today to making a bracha on charoset. Why not? They're both derabanan. Yeah, it says the Lechem Mishneh. Yeah, but moror is not always derabanan. Really, it's doraisa. Really, just nowadays it's derabanan. So he says afagav yesh l'chalik. We could differentiate between moror and charoset, and we would say the moror himidoraisa bisman shebeis hamikdash kaim. Moror really essentially is a doraisa. It's derabanan today. No, fine. But we see, either way, you do say a bracha on other derabanan mitzvahs, like we just had Nikar Megillah. So Lechem Mishneh leaves it as a question. Why Taka don't we say a bracha on Charoset? Leaves it as a question. He doesn't answer. That's the whole Lechem Mishneh there. So let's take a look at Avudraham. Why Taka don't we say a bracha on the Charoset? He gives an answer. V'yatam she'ein mevarchin ala Charoset. The reason why we do not say a bracha on the Charoset, even though ba'afal b'shem mitzvah medivrei seifrim. See, he holds seemingly also it's a mitzvah, like Rebbe Elazar Bar Tzadok, and like the Rambam in Mishneh Torah. It's a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. Why don't we say bracha? So answers the Avudraham pinei shehi tefela lekarpas. It's secondary to the karpas. And what's the principle in Halacha? Vatnan, we have a Mishneh Masechta Brachos that says, Kol shu ikir v'imoy tefela. Anytime you have an ikir and a tafel, a main product and a secondary product, mevorich ala ikir u'poiter es tefela. You say the bracha on the main thing, and that exempts the secondary thing. You don't make multiple brachas. You do one bracha to cover multiple things. So how does that apply over here? What does karpas and mor have to do with each other? Adama.
No, but I think what to make the process is more right or shahakal. It's nuts, it's apples, it's
okay.
figs, it's
It should be ha'etz seemingly.
Eitz or shachar.
And are we talking about birchas hanenin? Or are we talking about birchas mitzvahs?
Mitzvahs, yeah.
Oh.
But there's no birchas and mitzvah on karpas.
No.
They're both used for dipping.
Yeah. It's a little bit, I think, complicated to understand what he's saying here.
well, dipping sound pretty.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Somehow it's already included the charoset. Really, if you said even if you said adama, that would include the ha'etz, that would cover the ha'etz automatically.
Right.
So somehow the karpas is covering the charoset also.
It's not eating, you're dipping. I mean, you just
You're going
dip
to
it.
eat the charoset also.
You just dip it. You don't eat it. Do we? We eat
Yeah.
Who's we?
it.
People eat charoset. Do you eat charoset? Yeah. Okay. See.
Okay.
The minhag in Chabad tak isn't you dip and then you shake it off. If there's
Right.
any. That's something else.
A lot of them are going to say that. Everyone else are just going to shovel it on there.
Yeah, exactly.
Caviar.
Let's take a look. The Medrash Rabbah, Vayar b'siv loisam, says that Moshe grew up and he went out to his brethren and he saw their burdens. Vayar b'siv loisam, he saw their burdens. That's when he saw an Egyptian man beating a Hebrew man and he kills him. Ma'u vayar. So the Medrash asks, what does it mean? And he saw. What did he see exactly? Shahayaroya b'siv loisam. Uboiche. He saw their suffering, their burdens, and he cried. And he said, Chavali aleichem. Chaval. He said, woe is me, tin moise aleichem. If only I could die for you. There's no harder labor. It's more difficult than meleches hatit, than working with clay. And he would lend a shoulder. He would shoulder their burdens and he would help them do the work, the labor with the clay. That's the medrash. Now, next is the Gvuras Hashem, which is the Maharal, which the Maharal wrote many Sfarim. We have the set here in the Chabad library. He wrote many Sfarim. He wrote a sefer on Pesach called Gvuras Hashem. He wrote, I think it's called Tiferes Yisrael and Shavuos. He wrote Svarim on the different Yom Tovim, in addition, of course, to his super commentary. I don't mean that it's super, but it is a super commentary, means a commentary on a commentary. Right? He also wrote the Gur Aryeh, which is a commentary on Rashi, and Rashi itself is a commentary. That's called a super commentary. Anyway, in verse Hashem, he says, "Ubir zeh." Rebbe Elazar Sefer Charoset mitzvah, to explain why does Rebbe Elazar, here look, in the English it says Eliezer, in the Hebrew it says Elazar. We have to figure this out. Why does he hold it to mitzvah? There's a typo over here. The word v'yesh doesn't belong there. The word v'yesh belongs at the beginning of the third line. I'm not sure how that happened. When it comes to the Morer, all it says is Meiru es chayim, they embittered their lives. And indeed, hard labor, there's a certain bitterness to that. Hard labor is hard. Avol, says the Maharal, it's not really fully bitter just to work hard. Lakach, therefore, he explains now why Rebbe Elazar Bar Tzadok says you need to have the charoset. What's the mitzvah there? Lakach oisin zecher latit. Therefore, we do something, a specific remembrance for that clay. Why? Because the ein dover yoser kasha min meleches hatit. Because the single most difficult labor is meleches hatit, like we saw in the Medrash, the malacha, the work with clay, as we saw in the Medrash above. Shekeno mirazal b'shmeis rabba. Therefore, bar remes shahaya hamerirus, again typo, skip to the next line, shahaya hamerirus b'melech satit. The bitterness that we experienced was specifically working with clay. She'em melech kasha yoser, go back up to the last two words on the last line. She'em melech kasha yoser b'melech satit, because the single most difficult labor is working with clay. I was speaking to a friend and he told me, he's a shlich in Canada. He told me that sometimes he has to go to the local cemetery to assist with the burial. And part of the cemetery, I think, is on clay. He said, it is so incredibly difficult to dig in that clay. It's not like regular dirt. Dirt is anyway heavy. But it's so incredibly difficult to get through it. It's heavy and it's hard to, it's thick. So he said it makes sense that the word teeth actually means clay, not mortar. Mortar is like softer a little bit. And by the way, again, as I mentioned, I looked it up in the Jasper. The Jasper translates it as clay, for what it's worth. So what's the Maharal saying? There's nothing more difficult work than clay. What's he saying? I think what the Maharal is saying is that it is not that hard work is necessarily a bad thing. Hard work is hard work. But certain types of hard work, meleches hatit, are so difficult, and you get dirty, and all of a sudden your clothing is covered with the clay, you look filthy. It's beneath a person's dignity. I think that's what the Maharal is getting to. Hard labor in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. Hard labor is hard. So you worked hard today. No, okay. That's slavery. It's not slavery. You worked hard. So hard labor in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily bitter to work hard. But when a person is debased through hard labor, debased through work, like Yamach Shemam, what did it say in the gates of Auschwitz? Arbeit macht frei. Oh yeah, don't worry, hard work will set you free. Yamach Shemam. It's when a person is debased through hard work, through the labor, when when they're forced to do something beneath their dignity in a debased manner, that is true bitterness. I think that's what the Maharal is saying. Bitterness isn't hard work in and of itself. Hard work is hard work. Shkoyach. Join the club, right? Who here doesn't work hard? It's the debased nature of the work. It's work that's beneath a person's dignity. That is bitter. So the Maharal explains that's why Rebbe Elazar Bar Tzadok says it's a mitzvah, because we want to, hard work in and of itself doesn't tell me anything. You worked hard in Egypt, so what? Why is that bitter? What's bitter about hard work? Says Rebbe Elazar Bar Tzadok, bring the charoset. The charoset is that. symbolizes true bitterness. That's working with clay. A labor beneath your dignity, a debased labor. That is merirus kimura. That is true bitterness. I think that's what the Maharal is saying. With me so far? Maybe?
I think so.
No. Yes.
Yeah.
Kind of. Now, here's for the pièce de résistance, as they say. Now, here I have an excerpt from the Rebbe's Haggadah, which in the box is from the Rebbe's commentary. But what is written above that, where it says Moror, that is an instruction that the Alter Rebbe wrote in the Haggadah, which is included in the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe, of the first Chabad Rebbe. We know famously, everybody calls it today that Tilas Hashem, wasn't always called Tilas Hashem. But the Alter Rebbe sat down with something like 60 Siddurim, covering the gamut from Siddurim of Kabbalah, Siddurim that had a focus on Dikduk and things like this, Halacha, of course. And he went through these 60 Siddurim, and I guess somehow clarified what he felt were the most precise variations in Dikduk, the most precise variations in Nusach, both according to Kabbalah and Halacha and so on and so forth. So in the portion of the Siddur that is the Haggadah, he writes as follows: Mora. After, now you're up to the stage of Mora, right? So this is right after we ate the matzah. Matzah we know we eat with nothing else. I knew a guy who was in a nursing home. He actually was a volunteer there. Every time by Pesach, I would give him matzah. I'll give him, God willing, this year too. He would always say, I can have it with butter, right? I'd always say, no, not at the night. Tomorrow morning, have it with butter. Salt, I can put salt on it, right? No, you can't put salt on it. You can put salt tomorrow morning, butter and salt tomorrow morning. But tonight, the night of the Seder, just eat the matzah. No butter, no salt, nothing. Okay, he asked me the same question every single year. Anyway, the Alter Rebbe gives us an instruction. Afterwards, after we eat the matzah, yikach kazayis morer. Good so far, right? Take a kazayis of morer, something like 3/4 of an ounce. Is that a mitzvah? Do you say a bracha if you do a mitzvah? You say a bracha. You should say a bracha if you do a mitzvah. Dip it in charoset. All of them, this is our custom. The Chabad custom is shake off the charoset. Why? You don't want to neutralize the bitter taste of the bitter herbs, even though, by the way, they're not even bitter tasting. It's romaine lettuce. Maybe we'll get to that another week, why we do romaine. But anyway, now, here are the key words. V'yavarich bracha zu. And say the following blessing. So what's the question here? What do the last two words say? Last two words, bracha zu. This bracha. Take those two words out. It's the same thing. V'yavarich. And say the bracha, colon, and print it below that in the Haggadah. Here it says Haggadah shel Pesach because that's the way it excerpts it when you copy and paste from Oitzer Chochmah. V'yavarich bracha zu. It says then in big letters, Baruch atah Hashem l'kenem al cholam, asher kiddushanu tzayzeh b'tzvana ala chilas mara. So which bracha do I make? The one that's next in my siddur. The one that's printed next in my Haggadah. So why does the Alter Rebbe say v'yavarich bracha zu and say this bracha? But now we know the answer. Why? Now we see the extreme precision with which the Alter Rebbe wrote the instructions in the Haggadah. He wasn't telling me to say the bracha alav achilas marar. Versteht sich? Of course I say that bracha. It's printed in my Haggadah. What is he telling me? Say bracha zu. Say this bracha and only this bracha. Because there's a hava mina based on a Belazar bar Tzaddik that maybe you should say a bracha on eating charoset. No, says the Alter Rebbe. V'yavarich bracha zu. Say this bracha, but not any other brachas.
Zu like tavka.
This one, and no other ones. See, and see in the note of the Rebbe, bracha zu, the words bracha zu, L'chura, yitar lashonu. Those are extra words. You don't need those. Just say v'yavarich. V'ulay meram is derech agav, says the Rebbe, and maybe that means that's the way it is, right? And when the Rebbe says maybe to a Talmud of the Rebbe, to a Chassidus of the Rebbe, maybe means 100%. So maybe he's alluding Derech agav, by the way, there's room to say maybe there's a second bracha to be making over here as well. And there is a bracha on the mitzvah of eating charoset. Re'ei, Pirush Mishneh la Rambam. Pesachim, we saw that. Pesachim Perek Yud Mishneh Gimel, we saw that. Lechem Mishneh Chometz U'Matz Perek Zayin Al Chayil, we saw that too. Even though after in Chayav love Birkas Hanenin, you don't have to say Birkas Hanenin on it. Why? Because you already said Adama by Karpas. This that we don't say a bracha on the mitzvah charoset. We saw that too. It's somehow included in the mitzvah of morer. Right? Tefela means what? That the whole purpose, we understand from the Maharal, Gewaldig, the whole purpose of charoset is that your morer is not bitter enough. You get it? The morer is not bitter enough. You need charoset specifically to bring out the true bitterness, the meleches hatit, the bitterness of working with clay, the labor that's beneath your dignity, the debased labor. Not Birchsenen. And he explains, Maharal, Charoy says mitzvah. Because according to Maharal, he explains that how is the morer tofel secondary? How is it included to the ikkur, which is the morer? Because it's coming to enhance the morer and show us what is true bitterness. True bitterness is the labor that's beneath your dignity. Meleches hatit, very difficult to work with. A debased labor, that's true bitterness. And this is all, the last 35 minutes is all to explain two words in the Alter Rebbe's Haggadah. Yivorich bracha zu. This bracha. Not the bracha on charoset. I warned you that this was a little bit different than the halacha that we usually do, but I got too excited. I'm sorry. It just kind of happened. And
So basically, everything we learned is really to explain an extra word, zu, bracha zu.
bracha zu.
Yeah, bracha zu.
Correct.
Everything we learned is basically explaining that.
I worked backwards.
Like the title of the shir should be bracha zu.
Yes.
Alter Rebbe says bracha zu.
Correct. Okay. Let's get even more excited now.
Oh,
This sicha that we're going to learn together, God willing, is Pashat Lechem sicha, an unbelievable sicha that we have here today. Hashem, I think we're going to hopefully, I'm not sure how far we're going to get today. I hope that God willing, we're going to be able to learn the sicha together over the course of 3 weeks. It's mamish a yesodus nika sicha, fantastic sicha from the Rebbe. I had Rachmanos on you, and I found the Hebrew copy. I wanted to do the original as Yiddish. That's the most gishmak. But I had Rachmanos, so I hope I made the right decision.
yes.
And we're going to do it in Lashon HaKodesh in Hebrew. The translation is not as glatt, it's not as smooth as the original Yiddish, but we'll do our best to work our way through it, God willing. And I have some other books if we need to buttress the sicha as well. There's a lot of footnotes. We're going to take a look at some of the footnotes. The basic topic of the sicha is the 3 names of Pesach and what those teach us on a spiritual level, and how indeed the 3 names of Pesach follow a specific order in time, chronologically. I have another copy of this. I have a small version of this too. Anyone else?
I want to see where it is. This is the Likkutei Sichos, right?
This sicha was delivered by the Rebbe at Fabrengen on Achshel Pesach, the last day of Pesach, 1977. So I was all of 1 year old at the time. And it is printed in volume 17 of Likkutei Sichos. There's 2 Pesach Sichos actually in volume 17. The other one is a bomb of a sicha. It's very long and goes through the entire Haggadah and explains the whole Haggadah, like not different explanations. I mean, one explanation of the entire Haggadah. It's completely mind-boggling, but it's long and it's hard. This one's a little bit shorter and also very, very, very geschmack. I mean, I think so. And my general rule of thumb when it comes to learning is that if I'm enjoying it, it's good, and other people will also enjoy it. That's just usually the way things work. Okay, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about the 3 names of Pesach and the 3 stages of life, the 3 stages of becoming free, which of course the theme of Pesach is to be free. So this is going to be not only 3 names that are all, you call it this, you call it that. These are going to be 3 stages, 3 steps in how do we achieve freedom. That's what it's going to be. The holiday is called by 3 names and descriptions. Aleph, in the Torah, the written Torah, Parsh Mishpatim and Kisisa and Emor and Re'eh, it's called Chag HaMatzos, the festival of matzah. Base, Benusach HaTfilah, which of course came afterwards in terms of chronological order. Benusach HaTfilah, Nikba Lo Hoisiv Chag HaMatzos Azez Zman Cheruseinu. The Anshe Knesset HaGedolah who established the Nusach HaTfilah referred to it as Zman Cheruseinu, the holiday of our freedom. So this comes later chronologically. And third, B'Lashon Razal, B'Kach Gam B'Lashon B'nei Adam, Chazal, and just people out on the streets. What do we call it? Nikroim Kol Shivas Shmoinas Hayomim Gam B'Shem Chag Pesach. 3 names: Chag HaMatzos, Zman Cheruseinu, and Chag HaPesach. These 3 names are not just happen to be 3 different names for the same thing. As we mentioned, they're going to be 3 stages of Yitzis Mitzrayim, 3 stages of how does a person reach freedom. The holiday of Pesach, I'll just call it Pesach, as he said, that's what people call it, right? Nobody calls it Zman Cheruseinu, nobody calls it Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaPesach we call it. There is a nekuda klolis, a general nekuda, a general point of V'teichen Ikori, and a fundamental content. Uv'teichen nekuda zu yesham shloisha inyanim, and this central concept, the central idea, the central meaning of Pesach, whatever that is, has shloisha inyanim, 3 aspects, shaboim lebiti b'shloisha shemas elu, which are expressed through these 3 different names. And since in Torah, not only is every detail precise, like we saw, Bracha Zu is also precise, not only is every single detail, every word, every sentence, etc., meaningful and precise, but even the Seder of Torah, the order, is also precise, and it's a Hayra, a lesson. Footnote 3, the Torah Miloshan Hayra. The word Torah, and the Rebbe said this, by the way, probably thousands of times by Fabrengens. Torah miloshen hoyra'ah. Torah means instruction. So every single thing in the Torah, every detail, including the order in which things appear, is extremely precise and is here to teach you a Torah. It's here to teach you a lesson, a message, a takeaway, how to live. So since Kivan should say the B'Torah Hu Yoira, so Shleish is Hashem's Vanyanam V'Hoira Shalem Boim L'Sfi Seder Chashivusam. Therefore, we're going to go in order of importance. What do we start with first? Chag HaMatzos. That's what the Torah calls it. The 5 books of Moses, the written Torah. L'Chol L'Rosh Bo'in Chag HaMatzos. Hashem the Torah Shebechsav. That's what it's called in Torah Shebechsav. Achrechein, then afterwards. So that's step 1. Step 1 is going to be Chag HaMatzos, whatever that means. Afterwards comes what the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah determined that we should call it in Tefillah. Zman Cheruseinu. That comes right, right. That's what comes second. So the first step is Chag HaMatzos, whatever that means. The second step is Zman Cheruseinu, whatever that means. And the third step, the Achrechein Chag HaPesach, she's Kabel B'Loshen Razal B'Loshen B'nei Adam. Now, there's a footnote 5. The Kedushas Levi Parshas Boy. Benogel Hashem's Chag HaMatzos Chag HaPesach. So the Kedushas Levi is a Levi Yitzchak Barditchev, and he says over there in Parshas Boy Gevaldik Torah. He only talks about 2 names, Chag HaMatzos and Chag HaPesach. And he says each one expresses the perspective and the gratitude and the love of one for the other. Which one is it? Who called it Chag HaMatzos? The Eibishter. Hashem called it Chag HaMatzos in the Torah. So Chag HaMatzos is Hashem praising the one he loves. That's us. Chag HaMatzos. You guys were willing to leave Egypt. Boom. The bread didn't even rise. Chag HaMatzos. You Yidden are so precious. You're so beloved to me. So the name of Chag HaMatzos is Hashem singing our praises. Chag HaPesach, what do people do when they're in love? They talk about the other person. They praise the other person. Hopefully, ideally. Chassan and Kala, they say, oh, my Chassan's amazing, my Kala's amazing. Always how amazing my Chassan or Kala is. And we should continue to talk like that, right? It doesn't matter if you're married a year, 5 years, 20 years, 50 years. We should continue to speak that way. You know how amazing my Kala is? You know how incredible she is? Wow, unbelievable. How our lives would be different. How fewer problems people would have if they would taka live like this. So the Berditcher says Chag HaPesach is us singing the praise of the ones that we love. Who do we love? We love Hashem. We love the Eibishter. So Chag HaPesach, what's Chag HaPesach? Eibishter, you passed over our homes. You spared us. You saved us. We deserved it. We didn't deserve it. I don't know, but you spared our lives. You saved us. Eibishter, I love you so much. That's the Berditcher. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. That's the Torah, the Berditcher. Each one is the one singing praises of the other, because that's what people do when they're in love. They sing the praises of the other person. That's footnote 5 in a nutshell. So we have 3 names, right? Chag HaMatzos, Tzmat Cherosenu, Chag HaPesach. There are 3 stages that go specifically in that order, which is what we're going to talk about in the sicha as we continue. Any comments or questions so far? Okay. Base. Zman says Mitzvah Hukum was Yecheskel Leidas Am Yisrael. So it says in Yecheskel, the book of Yecheskel, that the time of the exodus from Egypt was not just the time that we left the country called Egypt, but it's the time of Leidas Am Yisrael. It was our birth. It was our Genesis, even though really that's the other book, right? That's the first book of the Torah. That's Genesis. No, this is our Genesis. Our Genesis as a people, as a nation, is at the time of the exodus from Egypt. So Exodus is Genesis. Understand? Exodus is Genesis. Don't call me out of context on that. I know which book is which. Okay. Now, why Take? Why Take is the Exodus, the Genesis? Why is it called our birth? So the Rebbe continues. The reason why the Exodus is called Leida, birth, by Yecheskel Hanavi, it's not just because at that time we became a people, we became an Am, a nation. It's not just that. Why? You could say that about other people too. Such and such a nation became a nation at their Declaration of Independence or whatever it was. That's not really what makes it our birth, that we became a nation. No, it's more than that. It's because when we became a people, we became a Metzius Chadasha, a completely new entity. We weren't a bunch of people that happened to be slaves in Egypt, but now we are called Jews, or whatever we were called at that time. Who's the first person called Jew? Ivri means Hebrew.
Or Jew.
Jew.
Or Yehuda.
What do you call him? Ish Yehudi Haya
Mordechai.
The first person called a Yid. What does he do? He stands up and says, I won't bow to you. I won't bow to anybody, to nothing. That's a Yid. So what really makes it our birth is not that we still became a nation. No, good. Other nations also, other people also became nations. No, what makes us unique is we became a Metzius Chadash, a completely new entity. Look in footnote 8. That was the beginning of our conversion to becoming Jews. And that Gedus, the conversion was sealed, was completed at Mount Sinai. And the Gemara says, a convert is like a newborn child. So we became a Metzius Chadasha, a new entity, which we're going to talk about more a little bit. Now, Hatachlis, V'Akavono, V'Ashleima Shal Yitzis Mitzrayim, Yimotim Torah. Going out of Egypt, it wasn't just down, okay, guys, let's go to Israel. Sounds good. No, it was much more than that. It wasn't just get out of Egypt to go to Israel. It was get out of Egypt and go to Mount Sinai. Go to Mount Sinai for what purpose? To receive the Torah. That was the purpose. The shleimus. If we just have the Exodus, we don't really have anything. The Exodus without Shavuos, without that's why, one reason why Shavuos has no date. Because it's not independent. It's not an independent holiday. It's intrinsically bound up, counting from Pesach. Because it is the shleimus of Pesach. It's the Gimar, the completion of Pesach. Of Yitzis Mitzrayim. Commission, as the verse says, when you will take this nation out of Egypt, they will serve Hashem on the mountain. That is the tachlis. It's the ultimate fulfillment of the Exodus, is to go from one slavery to another slavery. Ta'avdunas Elokim, serve Hashem. Instead of making bricks with your with your charoset, with your clay, work for someone else, work for Hashem. That's one of the reasons why Shavuos is determined not by the Torah telling us when to celebrate Shavuos on a specific date, the way it does by every other Yom Tov, but by telling us, figure out when Pesach is, and then count from there. Why? Like we just said, Shavuos is actually just a continuation of Pesach. That's what it is, which is the birth of the Jewish people. That is to say, what does this mean? And by the way, interesting, footnote 12, the Shavuos nikra atzeres shel Pesach. It's the atzeres, like Shmini atzeres goes on Sukkot. Shavuos is atzeres for Pesach. It's the conclusion, it's the end, it's the tachlis. Now, what does this mean? What does it mean that our birth is not just that we became a people, became a nation, but we became a new entity, a Metzius Chadasha, something completely new? In the Yiddish, it's a Torah folk, a Torah nation, a people of Torah. Not that we became a people, we became a Torah folk, a Torah people, a Torah nation. Kol ha-mahus shel Yehudi, gam ki yochid, hi Torah. The entire essence of a Yid, not just collectively, but even individually, the entire essence of a Yid is Torah. Look at a very deep statement of footnote 13 by Rebbe Sadia Goin. Kemaimer Rebbe Sadia Goin, umasenu einena uma ki im b'Torah. Our nation is only a nation because of our Torah. Nothing else. Not our clothing, not our language, not even our children. Only through Torah are we who we are. So that's what happened. That's what happened at the Exodus from Egypt. We became a new entity, a Torah entity, a Torah people. We're not a people, we're a Torah people. A people who both collectively and individually are completely and entirely wrapped up with Torah. Even people that don't know about Torah. We're sitting here, we're learning Halacha, some deep Halacha. We're learning now some deep Chassidus. We're going to continue, God willing. Not everybody's at the table. Some people don't even know about Torah. They're also part of the Torah folk. They don't know. It's like a person could go for years doing something that's not good for themselves. How many people wake up in the morning, what do you eat? A Danish. Wash it down with Coca-Cola. People get so into many times doing things that are partially not good for you. And you wonder why you're always sluggish, why you're so tired, why you're so weak. So then your doctor says, you better change up the diet a little bit. Instead of starting with a Danish, maybe just make some scrambled eggs. Or get a little bit of protein in. And cut back on the soda. You don't need to buy the big gulp. If you can't, maybe start the mini gulp first. But get rid of the soda. Eat healthy. Person starts to eat healthier. Less carbs, less sugar, a little bit more protein, whatever. I'm not giving a diet over here, but you understand my point, right? What happens? All of a sudden, and it's hard. It's very, but every morning I have a Danish. Every morning I have a Danish. It's very hard to change that. But once the person starts to change that, what do they discover? I feel a little bit lighter. I might even have actually lost some weight. It's easier to walk up the steps. I have more energy. So not everybody even realizes always when they're doing something that's bad for them, that's detrimental for them. And sometimes even when you know that there's a better way, that there's another way to live. Right? The people who washed, have the 2 Danishes, now we're up to the 2 Danishes, and 3 cups of coffee and a Coke in the morning, they don't even imagine there's another way to live. No, there's taka another way to live. So sometimes a person is so set in their ways, not out of brazenness or anything like that. Just this is what I know in my life. It's what I know, what I'm familiar with. That to imagine that there's another way is, who has another? This is what we do. But to get out of that can be very difficult. So what I'm trying to say is that we are a Torah folk. We are Torah people. Every single Yid is connected to the Torah. And the Torah is connected to every Yid. Not everybody knows, unfortunately. We have to share. We have to share with people. Having 3 Danishes in the morning is not good for you. Or in the language of the sicha, we're a Torah folk. We have a tradition. We have customs. We have laws. So who's more a slave? The guy who Nebuch has to eat healthy every morning. Nebuch. He's a slave. Me, I eat Danishes every morning. I do whatever I want. Sometimes I even have extra leftover almond toshin too. That's what I want. I do whatever I want to do. I'm free. I do whatever I want to do. Who's more free and who's more of a slave? Obviously, the guy eating the Danishes, he's the slave. So the other guy, he has to change his diet. It's hard. It's work. He's maybe up to a little bit of a slave also. A slave to his new diet. But he's much more free. He's lighter. He moves easier. Begashmi, it's a better life. Now, the Metzias Achadosha, this new entity that we become at Pesach, it's not just because Nebuch, we were slaves. We were downcast and forlorn, backbreaking labor. We were a bunch of losers, enslaved in Egypt for so many years. No, it's not just that. And then taken out of Egypt. It's much more than that. So it's not just that back then, before we left Egypt, there was no way we could receive the Torah. We were on such a low spiritual level, right? As Chazal tell us, Kabbalah says in Kabbalah, everybody knows this Kabbalah, not everybody, but that the Jewish people had sunken to the 49th gate of Tumah, of impurity. How many gates of impurity are there? 50. If you get to the 50th, you don't get out. So the Yidden had sunk into the 49th gate of Tumah. We were at such a low level. So it's not just that we couldn't receive the Torah. Like the guy who eats the Danishes every morning, you can't even talk to him about having a healthy food. He's not even able to listen, at least at first. In fact, we were so low, so spiritually low, that we were basically opponents to the Torah. There's no way we could receive the Torah. That's not really what happened. It's not just that we were on a low level and then we were elevated to a higher level, we got the Torah. It's more than that. Torah belongs to Hashem. It's Hashem's Torah. The Torah is completely beyond creation. It's totally beyond. It's from another world. It's not even from another world. Therefore, the Torah was something not just that was different from what we had up until then, and not just that was better than what we had up until then, but it was completely off the charts. as it says, Shaloi begidram. It wasn't even in the same category at all. It's like an out-of-the-box thinker, like a person who creates an invention. You know, who invents things? Who invents light a light bulb, or whatever, I don't know, a steam engine or whatever it may be. It's someone usually who's a little bit crazy, who thinks differently. He doesn't just accept the standard thought process of the way everyone has done things until now. He says, no, if we're going to have something new, if we're going to have a revolution, if we're going to have an evolution, we need to have a revolution. You got to think, how do you do things differently? So that's what happened in Matan Torah. It was a completely new, it was like an invention, something new. Oh, light, how did you get light bulb? Where'd that come from? It's like a completely new thing. And with this, we can explain the three names, which with this we'll have to pause for today. So there's three names where we're going to pick up. We were leaving a little bit on a cliffhanger, but it's 9 o'clock. We'll pick up next week, God willing. These three names, and in this order, Chag HaMatzos, Zman Cherusenu, Chag HaPesach, express three motions or three stages in how to become a completely new person. How to change for real. How to completely undergo not an evolution, like Charles Darwin said, but a revolution. How can I, on a personal level, how can we, on a collective level, experience true, powerful, profound, and meaningful change? Not just change, but Metzius Chadashim. How can we live a new life? How can we leave behind our problems, our challenges, our difficulties, the obstacles, the obstructions? How can I leave it all behind and just become a new person, a new Yid? This is what the sichas are going to be about. It's a powerful image that speaks straight to what everybody's talking about nowadays. How do I really live life? How do I live life? How do I experience freedom? How do I change? Like, it's so hard. We go to day to day, and you know what? I'm still doing the same things that I was doing a year ago, 2 years ago, and 10 years ago. I'm still doing the same things, the same bad habits. How do I get out of that? How do I change? How do I undergo not just a shift, but a fundamentally revolutionary change? Right? Again, evolution, revolution. Evolution is Charles Darwin. Things change over time. Good, things change. But we're Yidden. We believe in Bereshis Bar Elokim. We believe in a revolution. From nothing to something. So too, these three names of Pesach are going to teach us how to have a revolution in our own lives, how to experience a true freedom. And God willing, that was the introduction. That's the first part of the sicha. God willing, next week we're going to jump straight back in to the three names, and we're going to go, what does Chag HaMatzos mean? What does Zman Cherusenu mean? What does Chag HaPesach mean? And we're going to go very deep into it, God willing, in Mitzvah Shem next week. Any comments or questions? Okay, Yeshua everyone, and thank you for coming. To be continued.